Hello friends, let's discuss some special types of study, okay? Coming to retrospective cohort study. See, it's a combination of cohort and case control. Suppose you are going 10 years back and you collect 100 smokers and non-smokers from hospital data and follow them up to the present and see how many of them have developed lung cancer, both among the exposed and the non-exposed group, okay? So now you have a case control component where you went back 10 years. Now you have a cohort component when you come back to present, okay? So we say it's a combination of cohort and case control study. So go back 10 years and find 100 smokers and 100 non-smokers from hospital data, that is a case records, and now trace them to present and see how many of them have developed lung cancer, both among the exposed and the non-exposed group. So what's the advantage? You can calculate the incidence of lung cancer both among the exposed and the non-exposed population. On top of that, you can calculate relative risk, attributable risk, and the population attributable risk. And it's a quick study, it will save time. What about the mixed cohort study? How is it different from the retrospective cohort? See, in case of mixed cohort study, first of all, the same thing. You are going back 10 years and then from the hospital records, you collect 100 smokers and 100 non-smokers with respect to past history and you follow them to the present to see how many of them have developed lung cancer or not, both among the exposed and the non-exposed population. Okay? But now one friend of yours, who is also an epidemiologist, want to continue the study. He wants to follow up this cohort for another 10 years and see how many of them have developed lung cancer who are at present not having lung cancer. Okay, both among the exposed and the non-exposed population. So you are going back, coming to present and then going again to the future. That's a mixed cohort. Okay. So look at this question. A study was conducted among two groups of people working in the aniline dye factory for 20 years to know the incidence of bladder cancer. So see, two groups of people. Aniline will be the exposure and what is the outcome, probable outcome, bladder cancer. So basically you are going back 20 years to look at the history of who have been exposed to aniline or not, and then coming back to the present to look at the outcome, that is a bladder cancer. So now you have got two groups of people given in the question. People directly working in the factory. So I can say this is the exposed group because they will be definitely exposed to aniline. And the office workers of the factory. The office workers are not dealing with aniline. They are not exposed to aniline, right? So this will be the non-exposed group. This will be the non-exposed group. So the question is, what is this type of study? So you are going back 20 years, looking at the history, whether or not the people are exposed to aniline. So directly those who are working in the factory exposed, office workers not exposed. And then you are coming back to the present and seeing the outcome. How many of them, how many of the exposed and non-exposed have developed the bladder cancer? So this will be an example of what? Yes, retrospective cohort study. Right? Now coming to another special study, that is the nested case control study. See, the word is case control, but we'll come to know is that nested case control study is actually a cohort. Wait. So it is defined as a small case control study which is nested in a big cohort study. Look at this language. Small case control study nested in a big cohort study. So what we do is that I'll give you one example. So study is in forward direction, done for a new and a rare study. It's a diagnostic test, must be very expensive. Okay. Let us this example. Suppose in 2019 in the hospital there are 10,000 healthy births. Okay. And now what you have is that you have the data of the pregnant mother. Of all this 10,000 healthy birth, you have the data of the pregnant mother, whether the mother received tetanus toxoid in time, whether the mother received folic acid in time. Okay. So what you do is that you take the stem cell samples from the healthy newborn. From all the healthy, 10,000 healthy newborn, you take the stem cell samples. Okay. And now after proper labeling, you refrigerate the sample. So this was done in 2019. So what you do is that you wait for 10 years for any disease to appear. You wait for 10 years for any disease to appear, a rare disease to appear in these newborns. That is when they are 10-year-old. And suppose you find 50 cases of a new disease among the 10,000 in the year 2029, which means what? Remaining 9950 healthy. And among this 9950, you would select 50 controls. Okay. So now you have got 50 cases who have a new rare disease and 50 controls who are not having the disease. Okay. So now what you do is that you go back to that hospital record or data and check the history of their mother. The mother of the 50 cases and mothers of the 50 non-cases. Okay. So suppose the mothers of the cases have taken this particular drug, diethylstilbestrol, during pregnancy, which the mothers of the control group did not take. Okay, so now what you come to know? You come to know that taking diethylstilbestrol is a possible risk factor for this particular disease, which has occurred 10 years after birth. And if no history is found, suppose you are not getting any proper history, so you compare the samples of case and controls, okay? Blood samples. So if you find higher T4 levels at birth in cases but not in controls, then it is also a possible risk factor. So what happened was that your study started in 2019 and then you move forward 2029. So this is what component? Prospective component. Now, if any disease occurred in 2029, then you come back. You come back to check the history of 2019, yes or no? So this will be the retrospective component, there is a case control component. So therefore, it's a combination of what? Cohort and case control study. But the thing is that, see, why am I calling a nested case control study is actually a cohort? Because the requirement to go back 10 years from 2029 to 2019 will only arise if you find any symptoms of a rare disease among the newborns or 10-year-olds, right? So it is considered a type of cohort study because in this case we have to wait 10 years to complete the study, yes or no? If the disease does not occur, then you are not going back, right? You do not go back to time to complete the study. So the case control component is dependent on the occurrence of the disease, yes or no? That's why we say the nested case control is actually a what? It's a cohort study. Some other analytical studies. Coming to this one, question is asked, cross-sectional study. So what you do is that this is a one-time examination of a population, okay, based on primary data. So it's based on a single examination of the cross-section of a population. See, you cannot, suppose you want to take the history like this, whether you smoke, you don't smoke, what type of smoke, BD, cigarette, gutka, whatever, okay. So you cannot do this among all the people in the population. So you select a cross-section. Okay, I'll go to this village by some sampling method and you take one cross-section, right? So it is done on the primary data collected by the investigator himself. And then what you do is that you project the results of the cross-section on the entire community or the population, okay? So results of the sample are then projected to the whole population. So what's the advantage? The advantage is that you are getting a prevalence, an idea of the prevalence of that particular disease, okay? For example, idea of the prevalence of COPD among the smokers in that particular population. But you have not examined all the people, right? You have just taken a cross-section. So you provide a prevalence of the disease. So it's a snapshot study. Cross-section study is also called what? It's a snapshot study. So what's the disadvantage? You are just telling about the distribution of the disease. You don't know the etiology, the origin, okay? So distribution of the disease rather than its etiology. Plus there is no comparison group. Previously, whatever we have discussed, case control cohort, retrospective cohort, mixed cohort, nested case control, everywhere there was a comparison group, means a non-exposed group, but here there is no comparison group. So you cannot get incidence, relative risk, okay, attributable risk, population attributable risk, or even the odds ratio, right? And also it cannot establish time sequence because you are not following up, neither you are going back in time, yes or no? So there is no forward component or a retrospective component, right? And so it will provide little information about the natural history of the disease. These are the demerits of cross-sectional study. Question is asked. And what's the ecological study? It's a correlational study. For example, it's done at one point of time using secondary data. This question is asked number of times. What's the difference between cross-sectional and the ecological study? In cross-sectional study, primary data, okay? Ecological study, secondary data. So investigators are using secondary data, and it is done mainly for what? Nutritional surveys. So if you get this one, nutritional surveys, secondary data, these are the clue for the answer being ecological study. And here also there is no prospective or the retrospective component. Look at this question. Residents of 3 villages with 3 different types of water supply were asked to participate in a study to identify cholera carriers. Because several cholera deaths had occurred in the recent past, virtually everyone present at the time submitted to the examination. The proportion of the residents in each village who were carriers was computed and compared. So this will be an example of what? Yes, cross-sectional study. Got my point? Thank you.